Well, we know the Minnesota Vikings want to trade up in the NFL draft. We know they want a quarterback, which raises the question, what will the price point be to do so? Well, we have a better idea after today, and let's just say it gets a bit complicated. Welcome everybody to JG9 News. We talk all things NFL all the time. I'm Joe Regaro9 representing the 904 from the 602, and today we are talking NFL draft rumors. We are talking the Minnesota Vikings potentially trading up in the NFL draft. They seem like the wild card in all of this. The Vikings enter the draft with pick number 11 in the first round, but they made an interesting trade last week with the Houston Texans where they gave up a future second-round pick and gave up their second-round pick this year to acquire Houston's first-round pick this year later in the first round, giving the Vikings 2 first-round picks to work with. Now, I don't know why you would make that trade this early on if you don't know who's going to be on the board, unless you're using that as ammunition to trade up, acquire assets, and build a treasure trove of picks to move up in the draft, make it enticing offers so you can get inside the top 5. And that seems to be what the Minnesota Vikings are planning on doing, which raises the question, what will that price point be to get into the top 4 and get a guy like J.J. McCarthy and get your quarterback? Because obviously we know the Minnesota Vikings need a quarterback badly. They lost Kirk Cousins in free agency to the Atlanta Falcons. They have Sam Darnold, but he's a bridge quarterback, only a 1-year deal. That is it. They let Josh Dobbs go to the San Francisco 49ers in free agency. Then again, Josh Dobbs didn't exactly do a whole lot in Minnesota once he actually learned the playbook. It was bizarre how that worked out. Having said that, the Vikings do want to trade up in this draft, and we have a report from a reporter on The Athletic, Alec Lewis, who says, if the Vikings are committed to snagging a top 3 quarterback, it is doubtful they will be able to keep their 2025 first-round pick. If the Vikings are okay ascending to number 4 or 5, so trading with the Arizona Cardinals like we speculated before according to a report from one NFL insider, or number 5 with the Los Angeles Chargers, for an option like Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy, they could conceivably keep their future first. So what Alec Lewis is saying is that obviously we know Caleb Williams, he's going number 1 overall to the Chicago Bears, nothing is changing there. But if the Minnesota Vikings want a guy like Jaden Daniels or Drake May, who we assume are going to be QBs 2 and 3, don't know what order, it looks like May 2, Daniels 3 as of this moment, but that is flexible, that could change. If they want one of those guys, you probably have to give a future first-round pick, and you have to give a pick in 2025. If you don't want one of those guys, you want to trade up to 4, get J.J. McCarthy, want to trade up to 5 and get J.J. McCarthy, you don't have to give up a future first-round pick. That is according to a report from The Athletic. So that raises the question, is this report based on precedent? Is this report based on previous history? Well, this is where things get a bit interesting. Because again, the Minnesota Vikings have 2 first-round picks to work with. And it is a bit different because all the teams inside the top 3 need a quarterback. All the teams inside the top 3, the Patriots need a quarterback, the Commanders need a quarterback. Patriots, you're going to trade up to number 3 and get J.J. McCarthy that way because he's not going 2nd overall to the Commanders. Patriots need a quarterback. So it might be a bit different, but there are 5 instances of a team having a similar draft pick to what the Vikings had and a similar draft pick to what the Patriots had at number 3. I looked at those instances. These are all the 21st century, so from the 2000 NFL draft to present. I just wanted to look at the compensation, get a general idea. And even though Alec Lewis is saying that the Vikings would probably have to give a future first-round pick to get this done, I'm not sure that's the case. I'm not so sure that's entirely accurate. Last season, the Houston Texans had pick number 12 from the Cleveland Browns in that Deshaun Watson trade. The Cardinals had pick 3. Texans chose C.J. Stroud 2nd overall, and then they wanted to trade up and get Will Anderson, which was a great move for the Texans. He was Defensive Rookie of the Year. He is an absolute stud, that Texans defensive line. With him, Danico Autry, Daniel Hunter, that is a top defensive line in football. But regardless, the Texans had to give a 2nd-round pick and a future first-round pick to get Will Anderson. Obviously, they had to trade down on top of that. So the Texans did have to give a future first-round pick, but they did not have an extra first-rounder in this draft to work with. 2021, San Francisco 49ers had pick number 12. The Miami Dolphins had pick number 3 from the Houston Texans. The Niners want to trade up and get Trey Lance. Obviously, that was a disastrous trade. How that didn't set the franchise back years, I have no clue. Credit some good roster moves and drafting otherwise, and the play of Brock Purdy as Mr. Relevant in 2022 for that. But the Niners had to give up 2 future first-round picks and trade down and a 3rd-round pick in order to make that happen. 2013, the Oakland Raiders had pick number 3. The Miami Dolphins had picked number 12. Now, granted, that was a very weak draft class at the top, one of the weakest draft classes at the top of all time. The Dolphins traded up to get Oregon defensive end or linebacker Deion Jordan. The Dolphins gave up a second-round pick. Didn't have to give a first-round pick. The Raiders did not get a whole lot in this trade to go from 3 to 12. Then again, it was a very weak draft class at the top, but the Dolphins got Deion Jordan and only gave up a second. This is where it gets interesting, though, because 2003 and 2000 suggests that the Vikings might be okay not giving up a 2025 first-round pick, and that trading with the Texans to get that second first-round pick might be enough. In 2003, the Chicago Bears had pick number 4. The New York Jets had pick number 13. Now, the Jets had 2 first-round picks to work with. They had pick number 13, and they had a pick later in the first round. The Jets gave up both of those firsts and a fourth, and they got Dwayne Robertson in that trade-up. So the Jets didn't have to give up a 2004 first-round pick. They were okay giving up 2 firsts from this year. And in 2000, pretty similar thing. The San Francisco 49ers had the 3rd pick in the draft. Washington had pick number 12. Washington had multiple first-rounders to work with to trade up. Washington gave up 2 firsts, both in 2000. They gave up a 4th, and they gave up a 5th, and they got a very good tackle named Chris Samuels. So in 2003, the Jets had multiple first-round picks to work with. They used both of those picks, didn't have to give a future first to do it, and they gave up a 4th-round pick. And in 2000, same thing with Washington. They gave up 2 firsts from that season. They gave a 4th and a 5th, and they got their man. Now, looking at the Minnesota Vikings with their draft picks, again, they have the 11th pick in the draft, which they would obviously have to give up, and they have pick number 23 from the Houston Texans. On top of that, they have a boatload of day 3 picks. They have 2 picks in the 4th round, and they have 2 picks in the 5th round. So they have some ammunition there to work with. Based on that compensation, Alec Lewis, yes, he's hearing reports that the Vikings, if they want to go inside the top 3 and get someone, they might have to give up a future first. I'm not sure they have to do that. Based on precedent, I'm not sure they have to do that. Now, granted, the Patriots need a quarterback, and you know that if the Patriots do not draft a quarterback this year, they are basically putting the season away, and they are focusing on 2025. So it might be a bit different in terms of desperation. The Patriots might not want to trade down necessarily. But the Minnesota Vikings have 2 first-round picks to work with, just like the Jets in 2003, just like Washington in 2000. And the compensation seemed to be just give up both your first-round picks this year, don't give up future first, and just give up a 4th-round pick, and he's all yours. So I could absolutely see that. I could see if the Vikings want to trade up, even though Alec Lewis is saying that it's highly unlikely that the Vikings could do this without giving up a 2025 first-round pick, I honestly don't see it that way if precedent is anything to go off of. I think the Vikings could get away with giving up pick number 11, giving up pick number 23, and giving up probably 129 or 108, and then one of either 157, 167, or 177, with 177 being in the 6th round. Because if you look at the past with similar compensation, 3 times out of 5, the team that traded up didn't have to give up a future first-round pick to get this done. And again, this is every instance of it happening at the NFL draft in the 21st century. So history is on Minnesota's side. You don't make that trade with the Houston Texans to acquire a first-round pick when you don't know who's on the board, just out of complete randomness. You do it because you feel like you can move up in the draft based on what's happening and based on precedent from previous years. And I think the Vikings are planning on doing just that. And even though Alec Lewis is saying otherwise, based on history, I think the Vikings will be able to keep all their picks in 2025 if they do decide to trade up into the top 4, even the top 3 with the Patriots, and get a QB. JJ McCarthy potentially seems like the hot name. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you think the Vikings would have to give a future first-round pick in 2025 or 2026 for that matter to trade up and get a quarterback? Do you think the Vikings will trade up? Do you think they'll stand pat? If they trade up, who do you think they're going to take? Do you think they're looking at JJ McCarthy? Do you think they're looking at someone else? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. That's going to do it for this episode of JG9 News. Be sure you like and subscribe, helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out my main channel, JaguarGator9, where we talk all things NFL history all the time. Until next time, this is JaguarGator9 signing off. And as always, go Jags.